draw our first prizes today. So we have a bike light, and then we also have a solar charger that can charge your iPhone or your iPad or anything like that, anything that uses a USB. And the only people who are eligible are people who are in the room right now. So if people can hear me in the room next to us, you might want to come in right now. Okay.
Can I hold that for you?
That would be awesome. Thank you. Okay. So the first person is Eric Anderson. Is Eric in here? No? Okay.
Put his name back in.
Okay.
Well, not after you.
What?
You don't draw
Here,
again.
Eric,
Oh.
for you.
Okay. Okay. Let's try again. Let's try again. Tom Bryan? Tom in here? Okay. Third time's the charm. Seth McElvin? Come on, guys. Come on.
Again, one more time. Maybe go up there.
We'll just keep picking. I am really bad at pronouncing names, but Zhangjian Zhao? Right there?
Nice.
Okay, come up here. You won!
You won the prize.
So you want a bike light.
Better.
The box looks a little weird, but I promise you. Well, congratulations. Now we're gonna draw for the solar chart. Sarah Stefanos. Anyone? Okay.
If you don't get it on 3, you have to donate it to the speakers.
Mia Sato.
Wow, my date was off.
We got there.
Thank you. Come up here. There you go. Congratulations. And now I get the pleasure of introducing these three lovely individuals up here. Okay. So we're going to start with Angela Brzezowski. She's the Senior Design Phase Manager for Mortensen Construction. You want to wave? She's a 15-year veteran of the construction industry. Angela provides leadership to pre-construction process and works closely with project teams to provide continuous service to customers and our design partners. Working closely with Mortensen estimating team, she also helps to develop strong estimates, pricing strategies, and work product. Angela has worked for a variety of projects throughout Wisconsin, including the LEED Gold Certified 176 million Wisconsin Institutes for Discovery, located in the heart of the UW-Madison campus, and the $57 million Wisconsin Energy Institute, also seeking LEED Gold certification. Then we have Joe Liebau, Junior Executive Director of WasteCap. Since 2011, Joe has been the Executive Director of WasteCap and has been with WasteCap since 2008. He has been involved with environmental issues his entire life. Joe graduated from St. Norbert's with his Bachelor of Arts degree and went on to earn his master's degree in public administration from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. WasteCap Resource Solutions and its clients have diverted 436,391 tons of construction and demolition waste from landfills. That's 154 pounds per person in Wisconsin, the equivalent of 158,426 trees have been saved by recycling wood and cardboard. Currently, WasteCap's construction and demolition projects are achieving a 90% average recycling rate. And then last is Jody Shaw, an architect and sustainability coordinator for Potter Larson Incorporated. He works for which is a company that does local architectural design for over 100 years, serving the Madison community. Jody has been with Potter Larson 7 years and practicing for over 12 years. He focuses on providing expertise in sustainable practice during the design phase. So can we give them a round of applause?
Well, thank you. I'm just going to maybe set this down. I don't usually have problems projecting, so let me know if you can't hear me. Thanks for having us today. We're all excited and energized to be here to talk about construction waste. We prepared a discussion talking about the waste from creation through installation is what we've termed our presentation. And so we'll kind of cover the gamut and how the industry is addressing waste and from, actually out in the field to planning new projects. So, as Katie mentioned, I'm with Mortensen Construction. Mortensen Construction is a family-owned business, national and international. We've been in business for almost 60 years. We are industry leaders in technology and also in sustainability. In fact, we've recently created a Center for Sustainable Energy, which is focusing on, net zero applications, but in triple net zero. We do a lot of work with the federal government, so that's a focus of our company. We're a large contractor and construction management firm in the top 25 by ENR. And I think what we bring to to our projects is leadership, stability, and financial strength. So, as it pertains to sustainability, we're devoted to the environment. We have over 250 LEED accredited professionals. And so, for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, which Katie had mentioned, it's an organization that provides guidance for facility construction, new and existing buildings, looking at ways to reduce energy usage as well as incorporate sustainable practices in the building and design process. We've got a number of projects that have been LEED certified, totaling over $7 billion. We're ranked 13th amongst the top green contractors in ENR, so I think we know what we're doing in that regard, and we've got the teammates who support that effort. The other piece that I wanted to mention about our company that fulfills our sustainability message is the fact that we've really put a lot of energy into renewable energies. We're the second largest wind builder in North America, and also have been growing our solar building expertise as well. So I think in all, the whole sustainability and renewable mission is strong with our company. And I'll let Joe and Jody talk about their organizations as well.
All right, my name's Joe Liebau. I'm the Executive Director at WasteCap. I've been working with WasteCap Resource Solutions for about 5 years, as said during the introduction. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. Our purpose is to provide waste reduction and recycling assistance for the benefit of business and the environment. That mission in itself is something that we try to talk about every day and talk about with everyone we work with. When you look at it, it says business and the environment. If those two things don't make sense, we don't do the work. The reason that our nonprofit was created was the idea that business can succeed through doing our work, and so can the environment. One doesn't have to succeed off the back of the other. And that's kind of what our organization has shown over time. Every project that we've worked on, we've shown them savings, and we've shown great recycling rates. If you want to switch to the next slide. The things that we've done over time is we write in written specifications, waste management plans. We do trainings across the country, teaching people what we do. One of the nice things about working for a nonprofit, your purpose is to work yourself out of a job. We're trying to train everyone across the country how to do C&D recycling, not come back to us to do it, but to do it themselves. So as time moves on, every company is going to implement that into their strategy, and C&D recycling is not something that we need to talk about anymore. It'll be sad when I no longer go around and give these interesting talks, but it's just going to be every day, just like when you're walking through campus and you throw a can in the recycling bin. Every construction project will be doing that. Some of the other things that we do is we've been working more and more in lead consulting, also in deconstruction. As time moves forward, deconstruction is becoming such a larger part of the construction industry. People are learning that the materials that we had a long time ago are much better than a lot of the materials we have today, and the value in those materials, keeping those out of landfills, is one of the most important things that we can do. So just in general, nice to work for a nonprofit in a sense when doing this sort of work, because it shows people that we're not in it to try to get money out of folks, but we're in this for the environment and to help save energy and save materials.
As Katie mentioned, my name is Jody Shaw. I'm an architect with Potter Lawson Architects. This is actually our 100th year of being in business here in Madison. We designed University Square right across the street. We actually designed this building here. We are also the designers for the Wisconsin Energy Institute. I specifically, as I said, as an architect, but I'm also work as a sustainability coordinator for a number of our projects. You'll hear us mention LEED a number of times. Angel's already talked about that. That's leadership in environmental and energy design. If you're in our industry, you know it. If you're not, you probably will know it, because towns and cities are embracing this, and it's actually becoming codified into our built environment. At Potter Lawson, we've got a number of LEED firsts. You can read them up there. It's not all that interesting. But we've done a number of dorms. We did a LEED certified dorm in Utah, the first dorm in the state here at Edgewood College, and also the first dorm here for the UW system in Whitewater. We also did the first LEED Platinum office building here in Madison, and we're also ushering through the first LEED for healthcare building in Madison also. So we have a strong commitment to sustainability and sustainable design. Hopefully we have another 100 years at this.
The one thing I would point out is that the tie that brings us all together is that we recently worked on the Wisconsin Energy Institute, which I know is also a building, and some of their mission is being featured today. And it's a project that we all have a lot of passion for, and it had a great experience working on, and it's a good story which we'll weave through our presentation today. But we're going to start off talking about construction waste, what it's comprised of, what impact it has on the world we live in today, and why it's so important for us to find ways to reduce it. So Joe's going to talk a little bit more about how, what construction waste is all about.
So as you can see on the slide behind me, that number, it says 500 tons, but that's 500 million tons. We just didn't have the million word after it. This is one of the common slides that we show right at the beginning of our training when we're talking to people about C&D waste going to landfills. If you look at it here, the purplish part there is municipal solid waste. That's every day what's going on in your garbage bins. Pick up what, your waste management trucks or your Violas or whoever else is coming to do your local pickups. Pick up. The burgundy reddish part is 41% of that, and that's construction and demolition debris. That's just from our building. So I'm not sure how many people in here work for a contractor or do much building, but probably not too many of you. But yet still 40% of our waste is coming from that every day. So that's what's filling up our landfills. Switch to the next one. This is construction waste in the top 10 components in Wisconsin landfills. We bolded some of those. So the first one's food. Organic waste or food waste is always usually the top part in any landfill. After that is untreated wood, which makes up about 9% of Wisconsin landfills. After that is roofing shingles at 5.8%. And then if you work your way down, you get 4.9% of Wisconsin landfills are filled with metal. Anyone who knows anything about recycling knows metal is very valuable, and everyone's trying to recycle it more and more, but yet still 5% of our landfills here are filled with that. And then working your way down is cardboard and rock and concrete brick. The reason I bring this up is all those things are recyclable, very easily recyclable across the entire state of Wisconsin. So it's something we like to point out, that we're creating waste and we're putting it into landfills when it's easily recyclable. And then the last thing we have here is just the case for reducing recycling. There's a number of reasons that recycling on a construction project makes sense. The environment. It was kind of funny, during our training, we've been doing it for about 6 years now. The right thing to do has only been brought up in the last few years. The first couple of years we taught it, no one ever said it's the right thing to do. But as time moves forward, everyone's starting to understand that recycling, especially on our building side, is the right thing to do. The market demand is a huge part of that. Everyone here is talking about LEED projects. People want LEED buildings. People want to go to places that are LEED buildings, or whether other sustainable features within those buildings. People see that as a value add, and if they have a choice, they're always going to go to the environmental route. But one of the biggest things that we have here is ease and cost and the economy of it. C&D recycling makes money. The bottom line is, if you recycle your materials, the way that we've shown is very possible, it's going to give a positive benefit to your bottom line. That's across all projects. It's a very simple way of doing things, and it makes sense for the contractor. So when we talk about C&D recycling, and that's kind of what I'll talk about, the biggest thing that we can tell anyone is if you're a contractor and you're not doing it, you're throwing money in the landfill. You're not throwing materials from a dumpster in the landfill, you're throwing your money that you could have in your pocket at the end of that project in a landfill.
So, no differently, I think that, the case for recycling our waste that we create through our construction industry is no different than any other waste, and the approach that we take is no different. We look to reduce, look to reuse, and we look to then recycle what we can't reduce and or reuse. And so I think we get this pyramid, which, this inverted pyramid of waste, looking for, reducing, reusing, recycling, and then energy recovery, and then the last resort being going to a landfill. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the trends and things that we are doing as contractors or construction managers to reduce our waste. And I think Joe's point about costs is really, waste comes in many forms. And as a builder, we look a lot at the waste of our man hours, which equals dollars. But that is the same, that equates to waste in material as well. So for every man hour that I waste, I'm wasting materials with that man hour, which is cost to my business and cost to the owner, which is not a great usage of resources. And so the big emphasis that we've been putting on in our building is really looking at how we're planning for reducing waste and reusing materials. And so there's been a big trend in our industry to have more impact and more involvement during the design and planning phase of a project in order to maximize the efficiencies and reduce the amount of waste we're creating. Part of that is the LEED certification process that Jody was referring, that we've all been talking about. And that comes into play day one on a project. The owner has to put together their project requirements, which guides the project design and implementation. And then it also guides how we select materials and systems to gain the most energy efficient systems, to gain the greatest amount of recycled content, to look to implement a design that reduces the amount of waste that we will create. Another piece of that planning phase is looking at the life cycle cost of materials and of systems that we're implementing into buildings. And that's really to give the owner the truest understanding of what their true investment is. I think this diagram here shows that really the construction cost of an ownership of a building or a system is a small portion of the cost of ownership. And really, we need to provide the right information so that they're making informed decisions during the planning phase, so they're not just putting in the cheapest, easiest, systems and or materials, that they're really understanding what the true cost of ownership is for everything they're implementing into their facility. We also, so lean, lean is a trend out there. It's been a trend out there for 30 years, especially in the manufacturing side of business. And the leaps and bounds in the manufacturing side, industry has been phenomenal with regards to building inefficiencies in their process. Construction has not been able to appreciate that same benefit. We've been talking about lean for quite some time, and we will continue to talk about lean. But some of the things that we need to be doing, lean talks about waste, both in, efficiency of a process, but also in waste of materials used. And so a big piece of that, and a big piece of planning for reducing waste is creating the right culture. So what we've done, and what we did at the Energy Institute is we actually held the committed to the top. So it started off at the very beginning as we started bringing subcontractors on, because it's not just Mortensen building a building, it's also 30 or more subcontractors who are involved in putting that facility together. And they all have to have the shared mission and culture towards reducing, reusing, and recycling. So we actually had a committed at the top where we brought the leaders of all those organizations that were part of that project together at the very onset of the project to make sure that they understood our plan that we had for reducing and reusing and recycling, and we're committed to that as well. We also then, every worker, I think there was something like 10,000 orientations that we did on that job site with the churn of all the different tradespeople who came onto that job site. They each had to be trained and orientated to understand what our mission was in order for us to be able to realize our goals with regards to reducing and reusing on the project. Process, we have to plan and have the right pieces in place to make sure that we can realize that by having contracts set up with all of our subcontractors that have language that support the plan that we have in place. We also need to have the right teams engaged. So Joe and his team with WasteCap was a consultant that worked for us on that project. We brought them in kind of at the onset of construction. They would have been able to have a greater impact had we brought them on during the design phase and really informed the... Is that me? How do I turn this off? Oh, is that better? Oh, it's not me. It's off right now, so... This is off. Can everyone still hear me? So engaging the right partners and having the right team players, here, I think I'll try this again, at the onset of a project really then drives our ability to be successful in reducing the amount of waste we're creating. So, I didn't realize this had functionality. So, some of the last piece of that pie was technology, and so, and tools. So, construction is really, we have evolved. We're not, we still are out there building buildings with tools in our hands, but we're using a lot more sophisticated tools to accomplish those. So building BIM models, building information models, it's a technology that a lot of industries are using, and we're somewhat catching up on using for designing and coordinating the systems. And by doing that, we basically build the building virtually with our model in order to work out all the waste and conflicts. Those conflicts in the past were actually wasted materials that we would find out as we were building a building back in the day. They would go out there, they'd put their systems in, and we'd be like, oh, well, we can't get through this, there's a structural member here, so now we have to tear out what we just put in and do it again. So there's waste inherent in that. When we are now able to model all those pieces of systems out, so that we don't have those wastes and we're not doing all the rework out on the site. Every time we redo something, that means we're taking something we already put in place out, possibly putting it in the landfill, and getting new materials to redo it. So it's really driving first-time quality. And so some of the ways we're implementing the BIM technology is putting together these integrated work plans that focus on a task to fine-tune the details. But really it's driving towards first-time quality so that we have 0 defects, 0 rework, which equals 0 waste, and 0 punch list, which is an industry term at the end that makes sure we've built everything to specification. Another piece of the lean efforts that we are doing is looking at opportunities to prefabricate. So we actually have a hospital in Denver that we're building that we've actually taken all the toilet rooms for the hospital rooms. We're building them off-site in a controlled environment, in a big warehouse. We're building the entire toilet room. So the walls, all the plumbing, all the electrical is going into these rooms. And they are actually units. They're kits, and they're taking out and putting into the structure at the, when they're ready for it on the site. It's saving us time, so we're becoming more efficient and saving waste out on the job site. And in that controlled environment, they don't need to use as many materials, or they're much more able to control the materials that they have left over and reuse the waste material from the building process. So prefabrication, we're going to continue to see a lot more evolution of this practice to use in construction to reduce waste and frankly make our process more efficient. Another big trend that we really implemented at the Energy Institute was having a wired job site. So gone are the days of having big, huge rolls and stacks of paper plans, blueprints, in the old days that they call them. Everything's electronic. So we are able to inform our team members out on the field site, real time of changes. So it's reducing paper waste and just waste of rework out in the field, but plus it reduces the amount of paper that we're actually using in the field. So, all the different technologies that we're using to have real-time communication with our team members is reducing the waste that we're creating. And lastly, that translates to how we're closing out projects. So we used to have, you'll see this picture here, we used to have boxes and boxes and rolls and rolls and rolls of plans that we would transmit to an owner that they would then store for years on end and maybe not even look at 90% of it. That's all becoming one zip drive now that we give to the owner so that they have information that's actually usable and it doesn't incur a lot of waste. So reuse, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about reuse. I think there's a lot more opportunity for reuse, and Jody's going to talk a little bit more about reuse opportunities. But reuse is really part of that planning phase, and there's a lot of outlets. You know, it's all about being creative and looking for ways to reuse materials from a building. For instance, on the Energy Institute, before they deconstructed the old health services building, the UW SWAT team actually came through. They took materials like there was these granite toilet partitions. You never see granite toilet partitions these days. I don't think I've ever designed them in any of my facilities I've built on recently. But they actually took those down. They reused the granite in other projects. Habitat Restore. I know I've got a case study after this where we actually worked on a project. We were deconstructing a lab. We actually were able to donate the lab equipment and the casework and even sell some of it to another vendor or in a school district. Then there's a lot of other things that Joe has listed here that has intrinsic reuse value, that as we plan for that, it all contributes to the message of reducing and reusing our materials so that we're not wasting. So I think I mentioned the case study where we were able to actually divert these fume hoods, and we've done it with HVAC equipment as well, big air handling units, where we're actually able to find vendors or other companies, or nonprofit organizations that don't have funds to be providing new equipment, to be able to reuse perfectly good equipment in their facilities, in their built environments. I'm going to turn it over now to Joe to talk more about when we can't reduce or reuse, how we recycle.
Thank you. So just to start out, the state of Wisconsin has a sustainable building policy. The sustainable building policy states that any project $5 million and above, or any demolition project that the state of Wisconsin builds, has to recycle, at a minimum 50%. As part of that work back in 2008, 2009, WasteCap was asked to go out and see if this was able to be done across Wisconsin. People had worries that, if you're up north or if you're in lower populated areas, that there's not going to be markets that are going to take these materials. Through that work, we showed that there are markets. And then kind of what I'm going to talk about here is what happens to all the materials when you recycle. So the first thing we talk about is scrap metal. Scrap metal is basically a no-brainer these days. Everyone wants to do scrap metal recycling. There's not too many places that aren't doing scrap metal recycling. Let's use, for example, copper. Copper right now, I'm not sure what the exact dollar amount, but it's $3 to $4 a pound you can get for copper to bring back. So there's value there, especially if you're doing large amounts of creation of copper. We worked on a Weston power plant right near Wausau, $750 million, and they saved, I want to say, just around $750,000 doing recycling on that project. So they had a large amount of metal, and that metal recycling created a large amount of revenue back. And doing things with metal recycling is just common sense, so I usually don't talk about it too much. Cardboard, we had a board meeting yesterday, and we have a couple of recyclers on our board, and I was told that cardboard currently is, I think you're getting a rebate of about $100 a ton. So if you think about that, every ton of cardboard that you're recycling, you get $100 back. So that's just straight economic. And the reason that you recycle cardboard is, first, you're saving trees. I have a fact on there. 1 ton of paper saves about 17 trees. But at the same point, a big reason to recycle cardboard on your construction projects is if you put empty cardboard boxes in your waste containers, about 40 to 60% of your waste containers filled with air. You're paying your hauling company to come in and haul air for you because those boxes aren't broken down and they take up room, and all of a sudden it looks like your dumpster's full. So those small things can show you very quickly about why recycling something, why breaking down those boxes, segregating into its own containers, can save you money not just on the haul, but also on keeping the materials out of landfills. Next material is concrete. Concrete is another one of those things that everyone wants to recycle because of the weight that it creates. The Wisconsin Energy Institute had a large amount of concrete recycling on the demolition side. They were able to recycle 96% of the building that they demolished on that site. Most of that came from the concrete that came down. I'd say about half of that concrete got reused on site. What they do with it is they crush it and they reuse it either as an aggregate or they actually use it for road base or things along those lines. Concrete's very easy to be recycled, and it's actually a preferred use rather than using new gravel that's mined out. I'm sure the engineers know better than me, but there's compaction rates and the way that the angles are set up on it that actually are preferred. So concrete's another one of those, I hate hate to use the term over and over, no-brainers, but it's very easy to recycle, and you pay, when you go to a landfill for C&D waste, you pay per ton that comes through there. Between $35 to $50 a ton we'll use. So you bring a dumpster of concrete there, that's a 12-yard box, you're gonna have about 5 tons of concrete. You're gonna pay $300 just to put it in the hole. So you're saving that on every single dumpster. And I think there was probably about 10,000 tons of concrete on the Wisconsin Energy Institute that came down. So just think of the economics on that. Next is wood. Wood is another thing that's very easily recyclable in this state. There's lots of markets out there. The first thing obviously is reuse with wood. People like to reuse old lumber. We do deconstruction now, and you actually have lumber that's real dimensional lumber. If you look at 2x4s today, they're not actually 2x4s if you measure them out. Back in the day, the houses actually have 2x4s. You measure them, they're 2 inches by 4 inches. That lumber is actually something that people want to use these days. It's a little bit more difficult, but that's the first one. After that, landscape mulch is a very big use for a lot of wood. Places will take that, take any dimensional lumber coming out, grind it, and that's what's going to go in your gardens or by trees or anywhere. If you walk through campus, I'm sure you'll see a lot of landscape mulch, and all that can be done rather than using new trees. We can do that through recycling lumber and not put it in the landfill. And as you work your way down, each one of these things, as we have listed, is kind of a lesser and lesser use. But there's a lot of places out there to take these materials. Next is drywall. This is something that we, as an organization, WasteCap, work directly with the DNR on. We actually have to go through the testing process of drywall. For a long time, it was considered a hazardous waste, couldn't be put onto the ground. And we work with them to prove that it actually is basically the exact same thing as agricultural gypsum, which was a soil amendment that farmers have been using for a very long time. The only difference is drywall had a little bit of paper on it. So what actually can happen with drywall is any clean drywall, this is your painted drywalls, your demo drywall is not really recyclable, but any clean drywall can actually be brought to a farm, they'll crush that or use it as bedding for their cows, and they spread it right on their fields. And that will actually help break up your clays and different types of soils. Obviously, you have to have a little bit of knowledge base in it to know how much you need to add to your soil. You don't have to keep pushing and pushing it in. But it's very easy to recycle, and it's something that, up until a few years back, no one was doing. And anyone who works around landfills knows that the process in burying drywall can actually create an off gas that actually is hazardous for people. There's a couple stories out there about people dying from the gases that are put off from drywall. So putting it on the top of a field and not burying it actually reduces the chance of those gases being put off. Next is carpet. Carpet's very recyclable these days. There's a lot of places that do it. All you have to do is have a testing done, and the process for carpet recycling, I'm going to talk about next is ceiling recycling, is there's a couple of places that really have expert in it. So it's carpetrecovery.org. We used to have the website on here. It looks like it might be off this slide right now, but that website, if you go to it anywhere across the country, they'll let you know and they'll help you work through your carpet recycling. We're looking at a very, very large demolition of a building in Milwaukee, a Northwestern Mutual building, 20 stories tall, and they have carpet throughout the entire building. We're looking at how to make sure that we recycle those. Same thing in here. If you look at the floor, all of this would be recyclable. Same with ceiling tiles. I don't see any in here, so it's hard to point to them, but most classrooms that you probably grew up going to class in had those white ceiling tiles in them. Those are very, very recyclable, right here. The company is Armstrong, armstrong.com. They will take those back very simply, and when they give you your new ones, they'll take back your old ones. So all these things are recyclable. Very quickly, we're going to talk about asphalt and shingles. Shingles are a large, large part of our landfills. Thankfully, it's going down, but the value in shingles is amazing these days. Your asphalt, any asphalt that you see created out there, 5% of that is actually going to be shingles now. They melt those down and they add it into the asphalt. Your asphalt, your paving creators across Wisconsin, your largest ones are like Payne and Dolan, they can't get enough shingles to recycle and put in. It saves them money, and they're trying to do it more and more. So when hailstorms come through or anything like that, you see large amounts of shingles being created. A lot of times those are going to landfills. They don't have to go there because there are places that'll take those. And then the last thing I talk about is mixed C&D. That's the same. I listened just a little bit to Waste Management talk, and they were talking about commingled recycling for your homes. This is kind of like commingled for construction sites. They'll take everything in one can and then they separate it out by hand. It's a nice part of your recycling program. And the emphasis there is part. This doesn't save you on money. It's going to cost you about the same to do this work. You're not going to find a value back into it, but it actually adds an extra bonus recycling that you can do. So we always say you should try to recycle as much as possible without going to mix C and D, and then use the rest through a mix C and D, because that's going to then, give you that extra percentage or two. So the results. Every commercial project that WasteCap has worked on has saved money through doing our recycling program. Very important to talk about. We've worked on over $4 billion of construction and demolition projects throughout our last dozen years. And the equivalent of about 152,000 trees have been saved through the recycling of cardboard and wood in our projects. And then kind of the big one is about 140 pounds per Wisconsin resident has been recycled through our work. So every single person in this room, some are smaller than others, some are bigger than others, but 140 pounds of you has been recycled thanks to the work that we've done. And just very quickly, case study, we're going to talk about WEI. So as you can see there, 111,000 square feet, 200,000 gross square footage. So 111,000 is assignable. That's the stuff that you can actually use, walk around in. It went from December of 2010 till October of 2012. As you can see, this is the demo. This is actually the building. The top picture there is actually the demo of the building as it was coming down. They actually took a claw and they ripped down and they picked out all the metal. So the operators of these machines can actually pick that metal as they move forward and pick all that out. And then the concrete went for crushing. We did our usual work, waste management plan, and documentation. And at the end of the day, we recycled 94.89% of that building and of the new construction that went up. So we had a goal of 95, missed it by just a hair, but 95% of what came down and everything that went onto that site got recycled. And that came out to be about 11,308 tons of material that stayed out of a landfill. That probably about 10 years ago would have went straight to the landfill. So that's the recycling side of things. Now we're going to go on to the design side.
And a quick note that 94.89, this is a LEED statistic. And I'll talk just a moment about LEED. Where LEED's strength comes from is that it is a third-party certification system. So LEED is something that the owner and the design and the construction team engage in. We track all of the information through design and through construction. We send that information to a third party, to LEED, and they actually verify that we're doing what we actually say we're doing. That's where the strength in LEED comes from. So it's not us up here telling you, yes, we recycled 94.89%. We have verification of that. And LEED's not a perfect system. Anybody in the industry will tell you that. And even this number, 94.89, the reality is that that actually does not account for a lot of the landscape waste that came beforehand, because that's a category that LEED does not actually count. In that specific project, a lot of the soils that were moved, we actually were able to recycle and not put in a landfill, which is a really great story. So LEED doesn't capture everything, but that's kind of where we are today. Like when I talk about our current industry standard, LEED is really where it's at right now. To give you some perspective of where LEED is, within LEED, we can work with recycled content in all of the material that we try to design for a building. But out of the 110 points, LEED only awards about 3 points for that recycled content. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move on. So it's not the focus of LEED, is not recycling. LEED is meant to be much more of a holistic process. Within that recycling, and really what I'm talking about is the materials that we actually specify in that building, how much of that material has recycled material in it. And the way LEED categorizes this is they split it up between post-consumer and pre-consumer. Post-consumer are all the plastic bottles that we're putting in the recycling bin today. These are items that have touched our hands. Pre-consumer is the waste that comes through the fabrication process. Should I be pressing this?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, we're not tracking for you.
Not that they're incredibly important. Kind of a really interesting example of pre-consumer is this carpet right here. And I've brought a couple materials that are various amounts of recycled content in it. And as you can see, it has a very graphic quality to it. What this is literally the yarns and the threads that fall onto the floor of a carpet manufacturer. They sweep those up and they directly incorporate those directly into a commercial grade carpet. So that's a really interesting example to me of what a pre-consumer recycled content would be. Other products, the way LEED categorizes this is it regards it as a percentage of the overall cost of the materials in a building. So they put the minimum threshold at 10%, and then we try for 20% for additional points, and after that, it just kind of goes up every 10 points. For the Wisconsin Energy Institute, we were actually able to have a content of around 27% recycled material as a percentage of the overall material cost of a building. And that's a large number. That's really, really big. But where it comes from on the design side is it's not reclaimed wood. We've got that in the Wisconsin Energy Institute, and that's actually what this floor is. I know you can't see it very well, but this is actually reclaimed Douglas fir that's in the lower level of the Wisconsin Energy Institute. But that actually makes up such a tiny amount of the overall material cost. Where we get points is using things like this. Structural steel, things that the building is actually made of. Aluminum, pieces like this. Every window that you see is housed in aluminum. The casing on our operable wall system has aluminum in it. These are things that can have up to 95% recycled content in them. And that's where, within LEED, we really pick up those points for using recycled materials. Other things are ceiling tiles, carpets, as we talked about, regular carpet, terrazzo, things like that. They all have varying amounts of recycled content. The issue with that is that for a state project, I can't specify any one product. I have to specify 3 equal products to that so that the state can go out, we can give this to Angela, to a construction company, and they can go out and bid that, because what this all has to fit into is the overall budget. And we don't have any control of what these things cost. So what I have to do is provide 3 similar products for everything I do. And then we go out, we get bids on all those products, and those come back, and we make selections, typically on what's the least expensive of those 3 that were offered. So as far as control goes, we don't have as much as we'd like, especially for state projects and things like that. So what we typically do is we design to LEED. Whether this is going to be a LEED certified project or not, within our construction process, we create a set of specifications. Within those specifications, we say that the materials that this building is going to be built out of have to meet these LEED minimum requirements. And so we work with the contractor to make sure that the products that we specify, products that they find that they can get a better price on or feel work better than what we've specified, we make sure that those meet those requirements. So it's really a team effort to push that forward. Another thing that we do is we try to design less. I mean, less is what we say. And by that, what I mean is a lot of what we're trying to do these days is we push clients and owners to think of not necessarily having so many finished materials in a building. A similar example, this is actually our office right here. And as you can see, we have a completely exposed ceiling. We don't have ceiling tiles. We don't have wood. Our floor is actually exposed concrete here. We use carpet, but we use carpet only in this area where our workstations actually sit. So it's a strategy of reduction is what it comes back to, a design strategy. This doesn't work in every space. Obviously, a space like this, the acoustic quality of this room is paramount, because that's what this room is designed for. So we have to have things on the ceiling. We have to have carpet. We have to have soft materials to absorb those sounds. But there's a real push in our office, in our industry, to kind of try to use less in what we use. So, but that doesn't mean we don't like to use the reclaimed product. Like I have an example here of reclaimed wood. This is wood that came from, I think this actually came from the bottom of Lake Michigan, where they dug it up, wood that was thrown out literally 100 years ago, and they brought it up, resurfaced, refinished it, and they make it available to us. In our office here, our large break room table is actually barn wood that was collected from all across northern Wisconsin. It makes a great story, it really does. We all love to hear about the reuse of these materials, but I balk sometimes when I call it necessarily a sustainable feature, because the reality of that product is that has been taken, it's been planed down, There's been a lot of energy put into making that a usable product. The product's often warped, it's rotted, it has holes in it, so they've actually gone back and infilled with a resin material into that, all of these holes. So while it's a beautiful product and we love using it for that intrinsic character, it's not necessarily the most sustainable option for everything we do. I mean, I actually like a lot of what Joe was talking about. It seems to me there's a lot of even better uses for a lot of what is being done there. So here I want to talk a little bit about where we're going. As I mentioned, LEED is kind of our industry standard, and right now we're in LEED version 3, 2009. This year they're actually adopting LEED version 4. This won't be fully in place for another 2 years, but it is a substantial step up in the requirements. And what's interesting to me about this is they're embracing this idea of transparency in the materials and the products that are going to be made available to me. In the same way that anything you buy from a grocery store has a label that tells you exactly what's in it, so you know what you're putting in your body, they're pushing this idea of the EPDs, Environmental Product Declarations, meaning that any product that I use has to come with a label that tells me exactly what's in it. Now there's no negative. A company isn't hindered if they have a toxic material, if they have silica, if they have something in there that's actually bad for the environment. They're not, the point is not to punish them for having that. The point is to make that open, make everybody know that. It's this idea that by making that focused, by people understanding what's going into that, there's going to be the natural inclination to remove those objects. I can draw an easy parallel to what Joe was talking with construction and recycling. A number of years ago, nobody knew anything about it, and you would go to the job site and nobody would do it. They would laugh at you for it. Now with LEED, with other things, people are really pushing that. And now if you're not recycling on a job site, you're frowned on, quite honestly. It's considered a norm in the industry. And that's a great thing. And LEED is beginning to embrace that with this idea of the Environmental Product Declarations. Another interesting thing that they're doing is they're actually removing this category of how much recycled content I put in my products. And they're moving to a life cycle assessment. An easy example to draw would be like aluminum. Aluminum is a product that is easily recycled all the time. But the reality of that is it takes an incredible amount of energy and heat to recycle aluminum because you're melting that down, combining it with others, removing impurities. So that process itself is not necessarily a purely sustainable process. The intent of the life cycle assessment is to look at that entire process. Again, they're trying to step back to a more holistic approach where we're not judging a product solely on its merit that it can be recycled, but that what kind of energy does it take to be recycled? Is it even recycled?
We got Shirley in Milwaukee as part of our organization working down the pricing on deconstruction and recycling 90 to 95% of every home that goes down. Because you can recycle about 99% of any home that comes down, it just takes a little bit longer.